Erina, welcome to Riders on Ice. So today,
Great to be here.
I'd like to talk mostly about your book, Deep in the Forest, which was published by Pantera Press last year. So can you start by telling us a little bit about the book?
Well, it's really, the heart of it is around Charlie. And Charlie's a young woman and she is living in this mansion that's been left to her by her parents and her grandparents, but they're all gone. So she has this kind of secret trauma in that she thinks she's responsible for her mother's death. So she lives in only 2 rooms. And her main thing is that she's really hated on in her town in Stone Lake. It's a tiny town in the mountains of the highlands of Victoria, because she's been blamed for a bushfire. So she's desperate to get out. She's got a one-way ticket to Venice to work with a bookbinder, like a master bookbinder. So she's very excited, but before she can get on that plane, she gets this cryptic message from somebody who lives behind the high gates, the closed community of the sanctuary. So she goes, well, I have to find out. And so she, on her way to find out, she literally runs. That's why it's so good doing Riders on Ice, because she's literally the whole book, the readers are held between these 2 metaphors and plot points, which is running away from the fire towards the ice. It's the 50-year, it's once in a 50-year event that the local lake has iced over, so it's bringing a lot of tourists. But she finds this terrible thing deep in the forest under the ice, and that's what starts the whole thing off. I think in the human soul there is a lot of things that are held in ice, but for people who are writers or artists or seek that kind of world, there are moments when that kind of ice will melt, and then it has to have its moment. It has to live. It has to breathe.
Okay, so I'll step and then I'll get you to just kind of I'll hold on to here, and then put 1 foot down, and then you're on here, you're on the ice.
I'm on the
ice.
Oh, fuck. No swearing. I could be like that kid and just get on that little kangaroo.
So the book cover.
Yes.
It's really provocative, it's really powerful. Just so many questions before you even start the book.
I think that's a beautiful way to look at it, actually, because the blue is representative of the ice, of course, and then you had this image that really reminds us of The Handmaid's Tale, and how secrets are, and how women are silenced.
I was in a cafe when I was reading it, and someone commented on the cover. They were like, wow, that's an amazing cover.
Yeah, did you tell them to go and buy it?
Yeah, of course.
Amazing.
Did you have any say?
I had a say, and I didn't say yes.
Oh.
Because I was worried that it gave too much of the story away.
Okay.
But my beautiful editor just said, actually, it will draw people into the story. And I took their advice. I think that a lot of things that readers pick up, they don't even know. It happens on a subconscious level. So I think, my publisher did a beautiful job.
Yeah. And because you slip?
I have a real fear of letting go of physical control, which makes me, it's like,
a control freak.
I have a lot of emotional courage because I don't have physical courage. Because it's like I've really developed that sense.
And one of the reasons I started ice skating, I always wanted to, since I was a kid, is really for anxiety.
Yeah.
I found it really, really helpful for
that is amazing.
Because I was really scared.
Yeah.
And I'm scared of everything, but this was it's really challenging.
Really?
And,
that's so brave of you.
The fear.
Yeah.
And when you're skating, you just forget about everything else.
I wouldn't say I'm an anxious person, which is weird, but I just don't like being out of control. And I have been on roller coasters and stuff. I hate them.
I hate them too.
I hate them.
So moving on from book covers to book binding.
Oh yeah.
In Deep in the Forest, your protagonist Charlie is a bookbinder.
She's not only into bookbinding, she's into actually Venetian bookbinding, which is sunken panel, really beautiful. So it's very sensual. I knew nothing about bookbinding. So I did a lot of research. I did go and visit shops that had bookbinding, And I talked to bookbinders as well. So I kind of got a sense, and it's one of those things that you go right down the rabbit hole, because there's some very beautiful things around, to the point where, I would spend so much time looking at how you create the letters for the machines for the books. And it's like, and I felt it was like watching poetry, actually. Yeah. And I think that was Charlie's experience of being in that world. She feels it as kind of telling people's stories, like telling their deepest poem to the world. I'm just standing here and I still nearly fell. Right. What I'm really worried about is having to get all the way around.
We'll get there. So, I've heard you speak about the universal story.
If you watch TV or read books, basically 90% of the stories we're told are the universal stories. And it starts out with, like the ordinary life. And then you get to the exciting incident, which actually starts the whole world of the story. So it's the thing that changes the ordinary life. And it's in 3 acts, which we're all very familiar with. And at the end of the first act, you get the sense of the end of that first world has gone. That's disappeared, and they must go on the journey. And then the second act, which is the biggest act, is all about the progressive complications that the protagonist wants. Like they want something, and so they're constantly trying to get it, and there's a lot of things put in the way, and that gives the reader a very satisfying experience. And then you get to the end of Act 2, it's where there's a crisis, and they actually completely they've lost everything. They're on their knees. They're literally, which I feel like I'm constantly on my knees.
So about that part of the rink now.
No, I think I'm going to have an extended crisis. And they've lost everything, and they will never get what they want. So it's a very powerful emotional moment. And Act 3 opens up with where they're in the cave. They're licking their wounds. They think they can never recover. They'll never heal. But there's some kind of metaphorical moment where they do find the strength to get back up on their feet and to then go for what they want with a lot more energy. And then to finally fight and vanquish, find the strength in themselves to find the tool to actually do what they need to do in the world. And I think that's how we live too. And if I think of how we live as people in the world, we often get to our third act and go, oh, we're going to retire now and we're going to become invisible as women. When in fact, that's our most powerful. And I think it's really important that we tell ourselves a new story. And again, that's part of why writers and artists are so important, is to remind people that in fact the most powerful act is the one where you build to the climax, and it's the third act before the story finishes. So I think it's really important that we are able to talk to ourselves and talk to our friends about how that third act in our lives, we've got to live the universal story.
It's great advice.
The person that I love to really quote in this is this Martha Alderson, who she writes these books around she's called the Plot Whisperer. I refer to her because she does it with so much heart, and I think writing should be about heart. Yeah.
So that's the name of the book, The Plot Whisperer.
Yeah, it's beautiful. But there are many other books I use too. Yeah.
We're coming up to a gap in the fence here. Yes.
It's terrible.
The skating.
There you go.
You must have really wanted to do it.
Well, I started off with going to O'Brien,
Yeah.
my brother and his girlfriend.
Right.
And I had someone teach me to do that and put your arms out.
Yeah.
So that I was a bit lucky then because I learnt the basics.
Yeah.
And then after that I came here and almost every day. So after that,
What was your heart? Why did you want to do that?
it's fun. It's very fun. And
Fun. All right. Okay. I would read for fun. Okay, I think you work on metaphor a lot as a writer. So I really wanted the forest becomes a real character in the book, like it's teeming and got chaos and life, but Charlie doesn't see that. She sees the order in it. She goes in the forest to find sustenance, to feel the earth. She smells the kinds of things you find in the forest. I think the fairy tale, I wanted to get that sense of fairy tale as the holder of the story, because you know that dark things happen in fairy tales, but also it's a story about healing as well, and great redemption and love. What I'm writing for is not just the plot. I'm really into plot, that's why I'm into the universal story, but I'm also very interested in giving the reader an experience. Like, I want them to feel their way through the book rather than just page turn. And so for me, you do that through metaphor, and you do that through the kind of sense of the ice is there as a metaphor, and we're skating on ice at the moment, and it's very safe to skate on. Well, it would be if I could let go, right?
You feel safe?
No, I don't feel safe. Ice is a beautiful metaphor of how our own hearts can change, and our own kind of experience of being alive can change. You find your way through to the light. And that's what ice does, it changes over time because of the conditions around it. Our world, we're living in a world where ice is melting. It's a dangerous place to be.
I think there's one more question for on the ice.
Okay. I did make it around. I'm really wrapped, actually.
I made it all the way around.
Hands-free, Mum.
So the sanctuary is at first it doesn't appear to be a cult. It seems like it's helping the community. Can you tell us a little bit about the sanctuary and how it works in the book?
From the outside, they do these beautiful things. They run this drug rehab for young kids off the streets, living rough in the major cities. And it's successful because you're allowed to leave, and most people decide to stay. So it looks really powerfully good, and politicians really love it.
Yes, they would.
So once we know it's a cult, I didn't want to write it as if to talk about cults in the way we already know. But the key thing is about in this cult, it looks good from the outside. It does all this beautiful work, artisanal produce, beautiful furniture, brings in tourists from outside. So the local community is very dependent on the cult, so very dependent on the sanctuary. So they're very happy not to ask questions. Everyone's very happy not to ask questions, and that's what happens in cults. And so I think that whole thing about that fine line between what is a cult and what is an intentional community is very powerful, because they look like an intentional community. And so I did quite a lot of research into cults, and I found some very surprising things about how they operate. You need three things in a cult. If there's a structure of authority which resides in one person or a small group, which they start demanding things that are very odd, like very odd behaviours. Like one cult in America, it's a running cult. You go there to learn how to run a marathon, and you end up in a cult where the colour of your socks determines where you are in the hierarchy. Or if you're a woman, you might end up grooming the main person while he's giving a talk. You'll be brushing his hair on stage. Like that's odd authority, if you ask me. The language that people use, I think, is very important. And then the closed community, if you can't get outside. And the surprising thing to me is that I started thinking that only very vulnerable people, like people who've had trauma and kind of were sitting ducks in a way for other people to use to manipulate. I realised from my research that that's not how it is. In fact, many of us, quite educated people, can end up in cults. And I did think, when I finished the last page of Deep in the Forest, I thought, I think I might have been born into a cult. Because I actually was born into a very strict Catholic family, living on a farm in rural Australia. We didn't know anyone who weren't Catholics. There wasn't the internet, so we went to Catholic school. We had specific language, specific rules. The parish priest was a god. And I realise now that actually I certainly had experienced that closed community, and where we believed a whole lot of stuff that I now think is quite odd, to be frank. Yeah. I really want to tell you why I find ice skating tough, right?
Yeah.
as I said, we're from a very tight Catholic family, but my grandmother's a kind of a witch. We'd go to Catholic church in the morning with my grandmother, and in the afternoon we'd go to spiritualist church.
Right.
And we would take a flower, put it in a little paper bag, and put it in the middle of the room. And the reader, the medium, would pick up an anonymous bag and read. And I always knew what mine was, right?
Yeah.
Because you knew which flower is yours. So I was told that I was an excellent ice skater.
It's true. It's going true.
And I am very obedient to the gods. So I went, right, I'm going to be an excellent ice skater. I was a kid, right? So I really tried to be an excellent ice skater. And I have to say, it was one of the earliest and possibly still scarring me failures that I was a terrible ice skater. And later in my life, when I was a late adolescent, somebody read my energy again, and she said, "Oh my God, your energy is exactly the same as a famous Canadian ice skater."
Get out of
and
here.
I said, "That is why."
Yeah. And now it's all coming true.
Okay, so Erina, how was that for you?
Okay, so I am really attentive to joyful moments during the day.
Yes.
And it wasn't joyful.
It wasn't joyful.
Being with you two made it joyful.
Yeah.
And I feel exhilarated that I did something that I felt really tough.
Yeah.
And I did get a little bit off the wall, so I'm pretty happy about that. And I'm very frightened of letting go of control. So I'm satisfied. I would come again.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it does feel like you're not in control at the beginning. And then as you gain a few skills, it's actually the ultimate control because every little movement affects.
Isn't that life? Because
Yeah.
that's exactly like writing. You start out and you're terrible at writing and no one wants to read except your best friend who says, yes, it's very good.
And you don't have the tools or anything.
Yeah, but then you gradually become kind of really, you put the work into your craft.
Yeah, and I have to, because I don't write that often because I'm an illustrator,
Yeah.
but when I have finished writing a book, I often feel like I've grown the tools and I can't wait to start another one. It's like, oh, I could try this, I could try that.
It's being in the zone, isn't it? It's being in the flow zone. You feel so right in the world when you know that you feel very nourished as well. It's like you're part of something bigger than you, and I love that.
Well, we were talking a little bit off camera about overwork, but the fact that we both really love our work. So how do you balance that?
Okay, so it's more than just that for most of us writers, because we don't make enough money from the work. So you've got a main hustle, and that means for writers they've got maybe 3 main hustles. They've got to make money from whatever they're doing, they're writing, and they're looking after the people in their lives. So they're interacting and being part of their community. So I think there's 3 big pushes, and I have not handled that well. I've actually ended up very ill from, like pushing it way too much, never having a weekend, always fitting everything into corners.
I manage some evenings and I manage to rest and I manage to talk to my family, but then I'm like, oh no, we can't go on that thing, or I can't go with you. And then you feel...
Well, we're missing out on life, aren't
Yeah.
we? But the thing is, I've made a new thing this year, and I feel completely different. I feel like I'm out of survival energy and in this creative energy now because I've put boundaries.
Right.
So I start work at a particular time. I have a lunch hour.
Yeah, that's
a
so
lunch
important.
hour. That's amazing.
whole hour?
A whole hour.
And you don't,
I
you're
read.
You're not typing with a sandwich or anything?
No, I read. I actually eat and I get a book out, which is
Great.
amazing. And then I will finish at a particular time, and I make myself finish. And I don't work on weekends anymore. And actually, I feel like a new woman. I feel much safer in the world.
Right.
Such a small thing. It's amazing.
Okay, that's...
Yeah, do it.
I need to do it because the other thing is with writing, you're in your head a lot of the time too, so you're already stealing time from your life, being not present at moments where you need to be present.
I feel slightly different about writing. For me, it feels as if you're completely right. When you're in a particular part of the craft experience, it is with your head. You've got to make sure that this sentence does what the 10 things it's supposed to do, that fits with the 10 things that every other sentence around it is doing. So there is that kind of heady thing, but there's also this other thing where you're writing with your kind of being more than.
Right.
That's what I love about writing.
Being.
It's you know, you're not just doing stuff with your head or your heart. It comes together like you're writing out of your soul. It sounds really wanky, I know, but that's why
I write
think
stories
it's,
about comical wolves. So
I love it. There is a wolf in Deep in the Forest, or a metaphorical wolf and a kind of and a fear of wolves. That's
wonderful.
part of that whole fairy tale.
oh, this is great. Oh, thank you for that. I'm going to follow your life
You
tips.
do, and
I
let me
really
know.
am.
Let me know.
Yeah.
I reckon that's my other calling. I'd like to boss people around.
Well, I'm going to boss you around now. Tania asked you to get 5 emojis.
Okay, I have
which
to
describe
look
the
at them.
art. Is it the art or the overall novel?
Just the feel.
Either the plot points or the themes.
I went with the feel, the beingness of the novel, which is the first one is Evergreen Tree,
Right.
because it's all about a forest and the secrets that lurk in the forest.
And never exposed because it's evergreen, so it's never.
It's very hidden. I went with ice, obviously, because ice and fire, the fire emoji, because there's the passion of the book,
Yeah.
and then there's the ice that they kind of literally, Charlie goes from a fire and runs towards the ice, and by the ice melting, thinking of fire, you actually get the 2 poles of the story.
Right.
And then I went with, I think that's a yellow love heart. I mean, because one of the things that's really, I found it powerful writing, and readers have said to me, it's been really, really resonated with them, was the love between the Charlie and her friends.
Right.
So there's a number of women that support her in doing what she has to do. And I think that quiet love makes us all brave.
Yes,
So I think it's
it does.
really beautiful how they are in the book and how we are as women and friends.
Yeah.
And then the last one is the secrets emoji, because it's all about the secrets.
Oh, which is a secrets emoji?
It's got
a woman going.
It's, no, it's a way too cute.
Oh.
It's a way too cute, like Avatar, but they're going like this. But I've got another one, which is a dog, because
dogs.
Bojo
I love it when
is.
dogs are in books. We love dogs in books.
Well, she really, little Bojo's like this big scraggy
Yeah.
dog that just ended up at their place because Charlie lives deep in the forest herself. Bojo found her way in, and actually Bojo's part of the plot. Bojo's really important.
Do you think Bojo adds sort of warmth to the story?
Yeah. Well, Bojo's another point of love
Yeah.
and another point of connection for us. I mean, I don't even want to call them pets. These little beings in our lives, they really hold us, don't they?
And I think it shows the humanity of the characters when they protect
I love
and
that.
link with the dogs.
Well, you'd know that as an illustrator.
Yeah.
And metaphorically, dogs carry so much
Join
weight.
dogs.
I know, yeah. And Bojo's just this really great, scraggy kind of presence that kind of is like the beating heart of the whole story.
Beating doggy heart. I love that. Well, thank you, Erina. Thank you
It's
for
a
coming.
pleasure.
Thank you for being brave. And thank you for
I
talking to
feel like you helped me be a better person.
us. Just like a dog.
That's right.